It is 2:03 Eastern time. So we are a few minutes in. We've got a small number of attendees. I'm Sandy from Buildingsact. I handle the field marketing activities for our partner marketing programs with great partners such as Blue Tangerine and Greg, who is gracing us with his presentation today. During the presentation, if we could keep questions to the chat portion, Greg has a couple breaks throughout the presentation that he will be able to stop and we can address those questions. But as I mentioned, we're very lucky to have Greg Bray on today, president of Blue Tangerine. Greg has been developing custom home builder websites since 2000. So he's gotten to firsthand witness and experience a lot of tips and tricks of the trade as websites and social media and everything digital has just completely changed our industry and atmosphere. That said, I'm going to let Greg take it away for the presentation.
Well, thank you so much. Just confirm you can hear me okay with a quick hear you fine in the chat, just so everybody's good to go. I'm excited to be here and ready to dive right in. Just make sure my slides will advance. All right, awesome. Well, for those of you who don't know me, I have had a challenge most of my life maintaining a healthy weight. All right, and maybe I'm not the only one who's ever had that challenge. But as I have worked on that for a long time, I discovered a few years ago fitness trackers. And I've got a fitness tracker on, I've been wearing for many years now, and it really helped me kind of match my data-driven personality along with, you know, the idea of how do I get a little bit healthier. And so, of course, if you are familiar with the fitness tracker world, right, there's a magic number out there. And that magic number is 10,000 steps a day. And that, for whatever reason, I'm not quite sure where this magic number comes from. It sounds really good. And it actually takes a little bit of work to get there. And of course, I became a little bit obsessed with 10,000 steps a day. And there's nothing worse than being obsessed with 10,000 steps a day than when you're getting ready for bed at night and realize you're only at 9,500 and you need 500 more steps. And suddenly it's like, oh, I'll be back in a few minutes, right? And get your goal and hit that goal. So I worked hard on that. I started increasing my step count. I didn't realize how sedentary I really was until I started tracking it. And then, fast forward a little bit, I end up at my annual physical with my doctor, and my doctor notices that I'm wearing a fitness tracker. And so she asked me, oh, how's that going? How are you doing with it? And I proudly announced that I have now worked up to where most recently I've been averaging about 13,000 steps a day. And I expected the clouds to open, the applause to rain down, the wow, that's amazing kind of a thing. And I think, everybody here, right? That's pretty good, isn't it? 13,000 steps a day average, pretty good. So, but instead, what do I get? It's like she kind of looked at me. She goes, then I guess it must be your eating habits that are the problem. And I was like, wow. Wow. So, okay. And I've thought about that experience a lot over the last few years since it happened, because I realized that I had become overly focused on one particular metric related to measuring my health. And my doctor, fortunately, was viewing that goal of keeping me healthy in a much different way, and was able to look beyond the single metric that I had become a little bit obsessed with. Obviously, exercise is an important part of my health, but it's not the only part of my health. And I think quite often we fall into a similar trap when we start looking at some of the things that we're doing with our marketing, with our websites, with trying to drive and grow our businesses. We kind of get focused on one particular way of doing it, one particular way of measuring it, one particular goal in mind, and we don't often step back and look a little bit broader and say, gosh, even though you're getting enough steps, maybe it's your eating habits that are the problem. So today, I want to dive in a little bit more and maybe peel back some of those areas where maybe we haven't been looking at it quite as clearly as we could, specifically focused around our websites. And so for those of you who are not familiar with Blue Tangerine, we are a digital marketing and website development agency, and we believe that every home builder deserves a sales generating website, and that includes you. You deserve a sales generating website. So as we go through these 5 lead killing mistakes, and I don't claim that there's not more than 5, we just only have so much time today. But as we go through those, after each one, if you do have questions, we'll take a second, you can drop them in the chat, and Sandy will share those with me, and be able to kind of help make sure that you're comfortable with the ideas and the topics that we're going through. So let's dive in. So mistake number one is not utilizing the website as a strategic asset. And when we talk about assets, right, the question becomes, is something an expense or is it an investment? And when we think about, again, you're running businesses, you're trying to grow those, we all understand expenses, things that cost us money, right? Something that we pay for. Is our website an expense or is it an investment? An investment, on the other hand, is something that we expect to generate a return, where we expect to gain something from that beyond just paying money for it. And so as you ponder, how do you view your website? How do you view your marketing? Is it an expense or are you actually supposed to get something from it, some type of a return? So not too long ago, I had the opportunity to have a conversation with Don Dykstra. And Don is the founder of Bloomfield Homes. He founded Bloomfield Homes in 2004. They built in Texas. And in that first year, they built about 60, 65 homes, somewhere in there. Now, today, in 2023, they're number 40 on the Builder 100 list. They build over 2,000 homes a year. So Don's figured out something along the way. And one of the key ideas that I got from Don in our conversation was really powerful. And he said that at Bloomfield Homes, they have what they call the one house rule. And in their marketing, they step back and go, can this investment, can this effort, can this campaign, whatever it might be, can it help us sell one more home? Can it help us sell one more home? And if we think it can, of course, you can't prove it until you do it. But if we think it can, then we should try it. We should experiment with it. We should reach out. So it's all about recognizing that what we're trying to do is sell more homes. What we're trying to do is move things forward. And so does your website actually generate leads? This last summer, we did an analysis for one of our clients where we were trying to help them understand that their website was not reaching its full potential. And as we looked at that, they basically said, well, we don't want to invest more because our website doesn't sell homes. It doesn't generate leads for us. And the builder we were talking to was builder number 1 on this list. So we found a few other clients that had similar traffic levels, similar number of visits. And then we compared. And we found that these other builders who were getting much better results had a much higher conversion rate than builder number 1. Builder number 1 at 0.06% of basically leads based to visitors. And these other builders were 1.5 to 2.5%. And we talked to builder 1 and said, if we can move you with the same amount of traffic from less than or from 0.06% up to 1.5 to 2.5%, what would that do for you from a sales opportunity standpoint? Well, that would be huge. That would be huge. And so the conversation was then about the fact that the issue is not websites don't work. The issue is your website doesn't work. And therefore, we need to understand why, and we need to work towards moving that forward. Our friends over at Do You Convert, which you may be familiar with, they help online sales trainers do a better job, or excuse me, online sales counselors do a better job. They are the trainers. They have benchmarked against companies that have successful online sales programs. And they found that those that are most successful see over 50% of their sales coming from website leads. That's not 50% of their leads, that's 50% of their sales are from website leads. If you are not at this level, then there's opportunity for growth. There's opportunity for improvement. Even if you're at this level, there's opportunity for improvement, but there is a huge missed opportunity if you are not yet at that point where you can say, gosh, we are getting 50% of our sales from website leads. So my challenge to you is to really step back and think, are we viewing our website as an investment that should be generating a return? And that return is leads that turn into sales. So as we look at that, we want to say, okay, let's beware of getting trapped by what I call self-fulfilling expectations. If you expect that your website doesn't do anything, then you don't invest in it, then of course it doesn't do anything. And so you go, look, I told you it doesn't do anything. That's a self-fulfilling expectation trap. All right. So you need to come to expect your website to generate these leads and then invest accordingly. So again, mistake number one is making sure that you are utilizing your website as a strategic asset. Excuse me. Not the mistake is not utilizing it. Make sure I say that right with my negatives in all the right places. All right. So number two is forgetting the website's role in the sales process, in the selling process. Has anybody ever bought a diamond or like an engagement ring or a wedding ring or something like that? Buying a diamond is a really interesting process, at least for me. Now I've been married now for 29 years and only bought that one wedding ring a long time ago. I was young and inexperienced. I knew nothing about diamonds, right? Well, I got a little bit of education. And of course, if you've bought a diamond, you're probably aware of the 4 C's, right? There's 4 C's that go into buying a diamond: clarity, cut, color, and carat. Now I know that. I've learned that. I've read about it. I still cannot look at a diamond and tell you, is that good clarity? Is that a nice cut? Is it good color? Carat, maybe if it looks bigger than the one next to it, I can at least guess that's got a little bit more to it. Even with all of that, I am in no position to say, that's a good diamond, that's not. This one's worth this much money and that one's worth that much money. Where does that leave me if I want to buy a diamond? I am completely dependent on coming to trust the sales professional, the expert that is guiding me in that purchase process. And I have to create that level of trust in order to do that. Isn't buying a home for many people similar in that process? Do people really understand all the nuances of what goes into a home, especially a custom home that hasn't been created yet, where they have all kinds of choices in the materials they use and the styles that they go after and the things that they include in the home? It really comes down to this idea of trust. And so some of the things that buyers might be wondering about as they sit there is like, can this builder provide what I want? Do they understand what I want? Do they have the experience? Do they have the process, the expertise to give me what I want? What will the quality be when this is all over? It's not like it exists already that I can really look at it. Yeah, you can kind of see maybe some other things that you've done. And then ultimately, if something goes wrong, and look, construction is one of those places where things go wrong, right? It is a complicated, long process compared to so many other products. Things go wrong. When things go wrong, will they have the integrity to make it right? So Blue Tangerine last year did a research study, and we talked to prospective and recent home buyers, and we were talking about some of the things that went into their willingness to engage with a builder, especially in an online environment. And one of the questions we asked is, what is most important to you when you're choosing a home builder? Now, they could pick more than one item. That's why these add up to more than 100%. They weren't limited to one restriction. But the number one thing they picked was they wanted somebody easy to work with. Then they wanted someone with a good reputation. They wanted information and communication. And of course, they didn't want you to go out of business in the middle of the construction process where they were going to lose their money, right? Now, let's be clear. That doesn't mean that 30% want someone who's not easy to work with. That's not what this data means. And trust me, there's not like an opportunity here. Oh, I'm going to own the market of the builder that's hard to work with because 30% of the people want that. That's not what we're saying. But what we're claiming here is that when you're talking to people about coming to work with you, they care about creating that trust. They care about knowing what you're like to work with, about your reputation and all of these things, even before they're really interested in the home itself. All right. The home itself is not the number one thing when they're talking about trying to choose between builders. It's all about that experience, that connection. And your website plays a huge role in helping people find that connection, make that connection with you, and establish that trust. Because typically in today's world, people are starting with their research online before they ever talk to you. They have already looked at your website. Even if they are, quote unquote, a word of mouth referral where somebody told them about you, they still go and look you up first online and try to make sure that they understand who you are, what you do, and try to start to gauge that. So what are some of the things then that you can do when they're looking online that can help establish that trust? Well, one of the biggest ones that you can do is understand how to utilize reviews. So in 2021, a few years ago, Google released a statistic that said 84% of online consumers will trust an online review exactly the same as they trust a personal recommendation, even if that's from someone they've never met before. Think about your own buying behavior. Does that match for you? Does that match the kinds of things that you do? Are you ever guilty of pulling your phone out in the store before you buy something and checking the reviews? I've done it. Anybody else done it? It's part of who we are now as a society and a culture, that we like to make sure that other people like this product, like this business that we're trying to work with. And when you think about where do they find those reviews in today's world? Well, it is on the internet, and more specifically on some of the platforms like Google Business Profile or Facebook or other types of review things, especially in the building industry. We've got Houzz, we've got Avid Ratings, and some of that specialize more specifically for builders. So when you think about how to then engage, you want to figure out how can reviews become part of your marketing process and activity. Now, you don't need a perfect review. Okay. Google also shared that they have found that a mix of positive and negative reviews actually makes you look more trustworthy than if you have 100% 5-star reviews. Now, the caveat to that is, if you only have 2 reviews, we're not really looking for a mix, right? You need to build up to that. And typically the average review count for top listed businesses is somewhere in that 40 to 50 range. So when you think about kind of where you want to be, if you've only got 2 or 3 reviews, it's probably, you're not there yet. It's a great start. So consider how you can include reviews into part of your process. How do you actually ask and invite? You will get reviews organically that just happen. Unfortunately, most of the ones that just happen tend to be the folks that are frustrated and upset. They're the ones that want to go tell the world about their problems and want to put it out there. The people that are happy, you kind of have to invite them a little bit more. So think about the idea of where in your process could you say, hey, would you mind sharing with someone about your experience with us, and give them maybe a specific question that they could answer. Give them the link. Don't make them hunt for it. Send them some type of follow-up. Say, hey, so excited that you're moving in this week. Please, tell us about your experience. Tell us why you chose, us as your builder. Tell us what you love most about your new home. So questions like that help them, instead of just give us a review, leaves it a little open, a little blank, make people think too much, right? Guide them through that process. But figure out how you can include reviews into your process and into your website. So again, trust building. Trust building comes from testimonials and reviews. It comes from quick response times to questions. It comes from becoming an educational resource. And this is through creating content like blogs or videos. It includes making it easy for them to find information maybe about financing with links to partners. And of course, it helps to show them what you have done before, especially in a custom build type of scenario where there is not a model to walk. There is not an existing inventory home for someone to tour. You really need to help them understand, can you do what I am asking you to do? Have you done it before? All right. So I just want to, Sandy, just pause there and just see really quick if there's any questions so far about building trust or about viewing the website as an asset. Any questions here? We'll take just a quick pause.
So I don't see anything coming up in chat yet. I know that we've got a couple people, Jennifer specifically, who may have some questions for you. One thing I would ask, and I apologize if you answer this later in your presentation, is as we focus on digital moving forward, yard signs, directional signs, what we call weekend directionals, all of the physical advertising that we have seen with home builders of years past. Where do you see that possibly integrating here? Or perhaps do we remove some of those needs? Because that can get very, very expensive and tedious.
I don't think that we're getting rid of those by any means. okay, it is certainly important to help people find you, especially if they're driving up and ready to visit on site for some reason. What I do feel is one of the keys is to make sure that your signage also integrates back to your digital, right? So you should never have a sign that doesn't have your website address on it, for example. You know, every sign should have a website address. Potentially, depending on the type of signage it is, you want to include maybe a QR code so somebody can look at more information on a web page that's very specifically related to where they are at that particular moment. You don't want the QR code that just goes to your homepage. You want it to go to something about that particular location. If it's an inventory home, it needs to be a page about that particular address, things of that nature. So there might be some signs that could be reduced a little bit, but in general, I still feel there's a place for that. But being able to use the signs to drive traffic back to the website is definitely a critical piece. And if you can use what we call kind of some URL tracking, where you give specific subpages, you can start to see which signs are driving some of that traffic and get some insight there as well to maybe see which signs kind of have more impact as well.
Great advice to really integrate your digital and your print media from that standpoint. One other question before I let you move on, I apologize. That's
No,
relative specifically to the reviews that you brought up. When is it appropriate or even permissible to use some of that content from your reviews as advertising purposes? For instance, if you have a handful of Google reviews, do you need to contact those users before you use it?
So as long as you're linking to those online somewhere where they already exist, they've put that out publicly. If you're going to put it into an ad or something and going to be part of a video or something like that, where you're going to take that quote, you're going to want to double check and just make sure you have permission. Now, you could potentially, depending on how you're collecting, you could get that permission implied as part of the process where they submit, where they give you that permission up front. That does not always happen if you're using Google or Facebook or something like that to be able to do it. So it's always best to ask for permission if you're going to use it beyond just linking to it or having it show up, in a Google search. But that's the beauty of using some of those platforms, is that they will show up online naturally for you as well. All right, and if we have time for more questions at the end, then we'll definitely dig in, but want to keep things moving. So again, mistake number one, not utilizing the website as a strategic asset. Mistake number two, forgetting the website's role in building trust in the sales process. All right, so number three is that we are not tracking and monitoring our results. We're just throwing it out there and seeing what happens. So you may not be familiar with John Wanamaker. John Wanamaker is considered kind of the father of modern advertising. He was a businessman kind of in the late 1800s, early 1900s, and had some retail stores. He even spent a stint as the U.S. Postmaster General for a little while. But he has this quote attributed to him. We never know for sure, right? Half the money I spend on advertising is wasted. The trouble is, I don't know which half. Have you ever felt like that? Have you ever felt like, gosh, we spend all this money and we just don't know what's working? Well, the beauty of digital is that we can track so much more than we can in kind of the offline world as far as our advertising spend, what's working, what's not. But so often we're not taking advantage of those tracking tools. So we miss out on the opportunity to be able to see which half is working so that we don't spend money on the half that's not. There's always going to be some things that don't perform the way you want. You're always going to have to experiment. So for those of you who are familiar, Google Analytics is kind of the primary tool for tracking web traffic and a lot of your online activities. In July of this year, Google Analytics version 4 became the primary tool, and version 3, which was actually called Universal Analytics, it wasn't called Google Analytics 3. They call it Universal Analytics, stopped tracking data. So if you did not upgrade your tracking codes to GA4, as it's affectionately known because we can't say long words in the computer world. I don't know why. We just have to abbreviate everything. But GA4 is an upgrade to the tracking tags that need to be put on your website. It doesn't necessarily happen automatically. There are some pieces that they've tried to automatically do because folks weren't paying close enough attention. But to really get it right, you need to have your website updated. This became needed and required July 1st of this year. So not today, several months ago. So you're past due. If you haven't done it yet, it's your number one homework assignment to make sure that that's happened on your site. Not only is there an issue with updating that tracking code and making sure those reports are ready to go, but Google Analytics 4 made a huge change in kind of how the report interface works. So you actually need to spend a little bit of time retraining yourself on how to read these reports, how to use these reports, where to find the information. It's moved around just a little bit. All the basics and common elements you're used to are still there. There's a lot of new data elements that are built in as well. So if you have not taken advantage of Google Analytics 4 and you haven't done that upgrade, that is your number one to do when we get off the conversation today. In addition to just making that upgrade, there are a lot of key improvements you can make to that default tracking process. So by connecting what we call external data sources, this includes maybe your Google Ads account, this includes your Google Search Console account. When you connect those to analytics, you get a more robust report and data set. Also within analytics, there's something they call events. Some events are built in, but there are many events, and an event is something that a user does on your website, for example, clicking on a link. There are many events that are built in, but some are not. And one of the biggest one that's not built in, for example, is clicking on a PDF file. So if you've got some type of brochure or giveaway type of ebook or something like that that's available for download on your website, unless you've set up those extra tracking tags, that is not going to show up in your analytics, and that's really powerful. Taking event tracking to the next level is where we're dealing with people who are filling out forms or what we call conversion events. All events are not conversion events, but all conversion events are events. See how I did that? That was very straightforward, wasn't it? So the idea is we want to understand, well, gosh, how many people actually filled out the contact us form on the website? Not because we can't see the emails that get generated and count them there, but because when we track it on the website, we can start to link it back to where they came from and then filled out the form, which means we can start to create connections between, gosh, this ad or this post on Facebook sent this person to the website and then they filled out the form, and we can start to add value to those conversions, which help us see, did that marketing investment generate a return? Are we getting a return on our investment? Related to that are using campaign tracking codes. They're often called UTM codes because the variables all start with this UTM prefix. These are ways to enhance your links from other websites. Again, maybe something that you put in an email that you send out, a link in an email, a link that you put with an ad that you're running on somebody else's website, a link that you put in a social media post, those types of opportunities to track that traffic from wherever you're putting that out there to where it's coming back to your website. And now, again, you can start to see which social media post, which email really drove the traffic. By default, you can say, hey, we got this many clicks from Facebook. We got this many clicks from email. But if you add these codes, you can say, oh, it was this link in the email. And we have link 1 at the top and link 2 at the bottom. And we can see which one, even within the same email, generated more traffic back to the website if we use these UTM tracking codes. Ultimately, we want to start tracking the source of where the person came from all the way into our CRM. So after they fill out the form and we get their data into the CRM system, are we able to say, oh gosh, this person came from Facebook, this person came from a Google ad, and be able to now connect not just the lead count, but the actual sales back to our advertising and marketing investments, and even be able to say, gosh, this was a website lead. At a minimum, if you're putting them in the CRM from the website, please, please, please be flagging them as a website lead so that you can see how many sales are coming from website leads. As a bonus opportunity, which is outside of the analytics specific type of configuration, you can get a lot of really intriguing information from what we call heat mapping tools. And this is some additional software, not super expensive, $100, $200 a month, depending on how busy your website is, that you install on the site that follows the mouse movements of your users, even when they haven't clicked on something. And what it starts to show you is where people are kind of looking, because believe it or not, people tend to kind of move their mouse when they're reading and kind of follow where they're looking on the page. It also identifies things that look like links that somebody tries to click on that aren't. I remember we had one client where we use these heat mapping tools where they had put their salesperson's email address on the website, but it wasn't a link. And people were trying to click on it. So we're like, oh my, let's make it a link, make it that much easier. Don't make them have to make the extra step of trying to copy that and do that. And we were able to see that because analytics does not track anything that is not specifically clicked on the way that the heat mapping tools can do. So these are some ways that you can take your tracking with your analytics and other tools and really move it forward to give you a lot more data, a lot better understanding. I love this quote. And if you want to guess who really said it, right? It is a capital mistake to theorize before one has data. Insensibly, one begins to twist facts to suit theories instead of theories to suit facts. And that's not really Arthur Conan Doyle, right? That's Sherlock Holmes. Sherlock Holmes said it, but since he's a fictional character, he doesn't really get credit, right? So the idea here, we need to have the data. We need to have the data. So some takeaways here based on how you can make sure that you're getting the best out of your tracking. If you haven't done the GA4 update or install right away, you need to do that. You need to spend some time learning your reports, learning which metrics matter. There's a lot of data in those reports, and some of it is not as important as others. And so if you're just not sure, you need to spend some time there kind of understanding that. You need to look at it on a regular basis. I call it a cadence of review, right? If you're only looking at it randomly, you won't see patterns the same way if you're looking at it, every Monday or every, first of the month or some of those things. When you start to set up a regular cadence, you start to see anomalies that come differently than when you're looking at it just kind of randomly or not at all. And ultimately, our goal, of course, is to make some of these what I call data-driven decisions versus gut-based guesses. If we just think it worked or we think it didn't, it's just a guess. It's just a guess. It doesn't mean that you're right or wrong, but if you've got the data to back it up, all the better. All the better. So again, just pause here just for a second. Any analytics questions or tracking questions that anybody might want to throw out really quick?
Greg, I don't know if you can see the chat, but Dan actually asked a little bit ago, specific to those review sites, if you would recommend driving people to a specific site, be it Google or Facebook or Houzz or third-party tools, or is Google the best? And then taking those to add the links to your website.
Yeah, I think it's going to depend on where your users are. Obviously, Houzz is pretty powerful, especially in the custom builder remodeler world. The benefit of Google is that reviews also have an SEO impact. So using Google as your source for reviews, because Google is always trying to figure out, I've got multiple sites that are all talking about similar topics, maybe somebody searching on, custom home builder near me or something like that. All else being equal, the one with better review scores is going to look like a better result to send somebody to from Google's perspective. So there is an advantage. So without a compelling reason not to, I would say Google is the place to be. Doesn't mean you can't set it up in multiple places and collect them in multiple places. But if you're going to make the effort to invite people, I would invite them to Google at least until you get kind of that foundational number, somewhere in that 40 to 50 kind of reviews. At that point, maybe there's enough there for Google. You're going to be different from most of your competitors. You could use some of the others as well. Now, if you find you're getting a lot of traffic from Houzz, and a lot of folks there, then improving your Houzz profile with more reviews within Houzz, because that's where you've got buyers looking at you. By all means, you want to look better than the other builders they're looking at on Houzz, and reviews are a great way to do that as well. So how's that for a great it depends answer, right? So many of these things fall in that it depends. But great question. Great question. All right. So number 4. The number 4 mistake is that you're missing location-based keywords and content. And I'll drill down a little bit more on exactly what I mean by that. All right. So in that research study that I mentioned, one of the questions we asked, what are important considerations for you in buying a home? And the number 1 response, which really shouldn't be any shocking thing, is the location of the home. Where do you build, right? The big question that you need to make sure your website is answering is, where do you build? Where do you build? You need to answer that question for two audiences. The first one are your website visitors. Okay, they need to come to your website and say, gosh, I want to build a home in this area. Do you build in that area? It doesn't matter how beautiful your homes are, how great they are. If you build in Dallas and I'm trying to move to Atlanta, it just doesn't matter. You can have the greatest homes ever, but I need to know, do you build where I'm trying to move? The second audience is Google or the search engines in general, because the search that I'm doing is custom home builder in Atlanta, right? So if Google can't figure out that you build in Atlanta, then you don't have a chance of showing up in that particular search. So answering that question of where do you build, it doesn't mean that we can't have beautiful pictures of homes. We want all of that. We want all that lifestyle, type of imagery, help people connect emotionally to the product and be able all that. But we can't lose sight of where do you build. So as we ponder some of the implications of how we do that, obviously maps are a big piece of that really quickly and visually helps somebody answer that question, where do you build? Especially if you cover a larger area or multiple kind of geographies, having maps helps people see that. Within the page content itself, it gets into a deeper SEO discussion. But the implications are we've got content that's visible on the page where we want to embed keywords. We have things that are more SEO specific, like our title tags or what are called our alt tags on our images, some of the header information that goes into different parts of the page. We have links within pages that drive over to what folks are looking at on the next page. Getting location-based keywords there is great as well. But we've got to be sure that we pay attention to actually telling, can somebody figure out, looking at this page, hopefully with not having to read every single word, ideally rather quickly, where do you build? Where do you build? Because it's one of the number one things they're looking for and they don't want to waste time. So a couple of key takeaways, right? Don't hide it. They need to know. It'll improve your SEO if you put these keywords into some of your title tags and other areas. The title tag is kind of the most important SEO location on a page, and it's not visible to the user on the page itself. It'll actually show up in the top of the browser in the little tab that you see that has kind of the name of the website. That's where you can see what that title tag says. And if all it says is, Greg Builders, you can improve that so much more if you say Greg Builders custom homes in, Charlotte, North Carolina, and you just get that location-based keyword in there. You can have an amazing impact really quickly with just a tiny change like that. Now, when you're putting those names in there, make sure that you're not just using kind of the local names for things. So things, for example, we build custom homes in the Tri-City area, right? We build custom homes on the Space Coast in Florida, right? We build custom homes in the capital region, right? Those types of words are important to have, but don't make those the only location keywords that you use, because those keywords are not as familiar to people who are outside of your area. And about 60% of home buyers are moving more than 10 miles when they're shopping for a home. And that's one of our other research stats that we pulled up. So they aren't as familiar with some of those names when they're moving from farther away. A really quick tip that's a really easy way to get a location keyword on every page is to get your address in the footer of the site. Lots of builders do not have a simple, office address, mailing address in the footer of the site. Right there, you get a city, state, zip set of keywords all on every single page of your website just by adding that address to the footer. So again, that's a quick one. Won't take very long. But something to take a look at that can really make a difference. All right, for sake of time, we'll hold questions till the end here at this point, because just got a little bit more to go, but I want to make sure we get through all of it, Sandy, if that's all right. But again, if you do have questions, go ahead and throw them in there and we'll try to address as many as we can. All right, last one, number 5. Number 5, the mistake is not optimizing your Google business profile. And if you're not familiar with your Google business profile, then I'm going to guarantee that you have not optimized it yet. So Google Bright Local did some research that said 94% of consumers have used a business information site to find information about local businesses. So Yelp might be one of those, but Google is the biggest one out there because it shows up as part of a Google search result. So you'll see it typically when you search and you see a map listing. And you've probably all done searches where you've seen this, and we call that kind of the local pack. Usually there's 3, maybe 4 results next to a map. They're marked on the map. And then what we call the organic results are down below those. And those are the more traditional search results that we're after. So when we talk about optimizing your Google business profile, we want to get you showing up in this map search. Now, the map search also has the more businesses link. People can also search on the map itself. It's not just on the main Google homepage. It's also a search that happens when you use the verbal tools where you give someone you're on your phone, where you're saying find such and such near me, type of a thing, or the closest builder near me, kind of a thing. Those are where these Google profile content really starts to come into play, and it's a whole separate SEO world that you can play in, and so many don't, that you can do really well if you just give it some basic impact. This is where those reviews come back into play as well. But Google Search Engine Journal found that more than 5% of the views on a Google business page result in a conversion, meaning some type of outreach to the company. All right, some type of outreach. That may not seem like very much, but hey, if you're getting 1,000 searches per month, that's suddenly 50 conversions or 50 potential leads just by getting to show up. Now, if you look at the screenshot here on Durango Homes that we pulled, over here on the right, you'll see this, what we call knowledge graph listing about Durango Homes. This comes from your Google business profile. This is something that Google tries to create when it knows something about you for you, right? And it can do so with reviews and some of the other things. Those can exist even if you never actually created it. But you'll see this own this business question down halfway through, or almost a third of the way through the page. That's one way. If you own the business, you need to claim this profile and take advantage of it, and really be able to use that in being able to optimize it, because there's some content already there, and you'll go through a verification process that allows you to prove that you really own it. It's not 5 minutes. Typically, it involves them mailing you something in the mail, so you need to have a valid mailing address. So they send you like a little PIN number on a postcard that you then put into the account. So it can take a week or two to get that. There's also a way to do it over the phone if there's a phone connected with the business that Google is comfortable belongs to the business, where you can get that PIN number via a phone call. But claiming that opens up all kinds of opportunities to add further content beyond what Google has. Now, this example of a search is done on a phone within a Google map, and simply a custom home builder near me. And that was, happened to be where I was at that point. But you can see that if you look at Chadwick Homes, the top result here, the second screenshot on the right is what happens when I click on Chadwick Homes, and I get this little mini site. I've got a directions link, I've got a call link, I've got some photos. Down below, you can see I've got an address and a website. I've also got this menu of overview, services, reviews, photos. All of that content is not coming from the Chadwick Homes website. It's coming from their Google business profile. It's almost like a whole separate website that you need to manage and set up. And you can see how, if you don't have accurate content in here, if you don't have the right address, if you don't have very many photos, you're missing a huge opportunity. If you haven't built that review profile that we talked about before, huge opportunity here, because these folks aren't on your website. They're not on your website yet. And this is a way to get them to reach out, contact you, or come to the website to learn more. Again, just to kind of hammer, here's some of the things that you have within the Google business profile, an opportunity to edit and update. You can pick categories, you can manage reviews, you can reply to the reviews that people post. So if you get one where someone's really frustrated, you have a chance to reach out and say, hey, how can we make this right? Maybe get them to edit that review later after you've had a chance to resolve their concern. That can be pretty powerful. as well. Again, you can configure, an appointment or a booking URL where they can make appointments directly with you through this process. Again, even without coming to your website, a lot that can be done here. And if you're not paying attention to it, real missed opportunity. Okay, gonna just to restate again, we're gonna claim and configure that business profile right away. If you don't have it, you want to get with it, enhance it, add some images and content, and then just make sure that you're checking on it regularly. It's not a one and done kind of a thing. It's something that you need to come back to. So that concludes our 5. All right. So just to restate, number 1 was not utilizing the website as a strategic asset. Number 2 was forgetting the website's role in building that trust in the sales process. You're not tracking and monitoring what's going on, so you're not getting good data. You're not taking advantage of these location-based keywords and content to help people find a location. And the last one here is you're not optimizing your Google business profile. So Sandy, if it's okay, invite people to put some questions in the chat, and I just want to share a couple of resources while we see if we collect a couple of those. So for those of you who are interested in learning a little bit more, Blue Tangerine and Outhouse are actually hosting a home builder digital marketing summit. It's next week. For those of you who are here in real time, October 18th and 19th. We'd love to have you. We've still got a few seats left. It's going to be in Denver. You can get all the information at buildermarketingsummit.com. I realize it might be a little bit short notice for some of you, but if you happen to be in Colorado, then plenty of time to still get there. Love to have you. We have some amazing speakers and content. I also mentioned the research study that we've done and shared a couple of statistics. If you would like our free executive summary of that research, you can get that at bluetangerine.com/builder research. We've got an executive summary. We also have a data visualizer that lets you play with all the results yourself and filter them down in different segments. And really, you can just get lost in it. Honestly, you can get lost in it. But there's some great insights there that we think are really helpful, understanding what buyers are looking for, especially in that online opportunity. And then finally, for those of you who are podcast listeners, I am the co-host of the Home Builder Digital Marketing Podcast. And so I'd love to invite you, if you haven't yet, to check out the podcast at buildermarketingpodcast.com and subscribe. And we've got great guests that are, home builders of all sizes. We've got consultants in the industry sharing great tips and expertise for free. And so we would love to have you join us there as well. Just please check that out if you haven't yet. All right, Sandy, any last questions here as we kind of wrap up with just a few minutes to go?
So only one final question, which came in regards of how often, or are there any automations? And I want to preface that with having worked with home builders in the past, and specifically to that Google business page, I know there are ways to see how many times people have clicked on that phone number. It gives you all kinds of great analytics. But would that be something that you would recommend that that our business owners, our home builders, check daily, weekly? What is the cadence that they should be doing that with?
I would say, to start with, let's not overdo it. Daily is a bit much unless you have a lot of activity. I mean, if you're getting reviews every day, then yeah, you might want to be checking it every day, because it's a chance to respond to a review, is really the big opportunity there. You hate to have somebody who's upset post something and then it sits for too long. So from that standpoint, if you're getting lots of reviews, then something is worth looking at. Granted, if you're inviting reviews, you'll tend to kind of know that you'll get the little surge when you send out that invitation, right? You'll get a few that come back as you do that. I think you're going to have to experiment with it. It's going to be a little different based on each builder's size. If you're a little bit smaller, probably once a month is going to be just fine, maybe twice a month. But if you're large enough, then a little more often can't hurt. Again, just a quick check. Anything new won't take very long. As far as planning for updates, that's something that, with new photos or new home listings, especially if you've got some inventory or spec homes that you're trying to get out there, that's another place you might want to look at posting some of that information as well. So as you release, new homes that are available for purchase, another place to put them.
Definitely. No other questions came in the chat. I would like to, from my own experience, be emphatic about the importance of having your Google all of the contact information for your business, it is easier to get a new social security number than it is to reclaim your Google business if it gets into the wrong hands. So for all of our customers who experience this call, if you're a business owner, please, you want to make sure that that ownership information stays in the right hands.
I think that falls under that strategic asset concept too, right? All of these are critical business properties, business assets that need to be protected accordingly. Great thought, Sandy. Thank you.
Definitely. Well, thank you so much, everyone that joined us today. Thank you, Greg, for your great information here. And we look forward to continuing the conversation online, and wish you the best at that summit.
Thanks, everybody. Really appreciate your time today. And please reach out with any questions. Connect on LinkedIn. Love to continue the conversation. Thank you.